Hi guys, Ali here. This is like my third take at attempting to record this damn audio because the house can be so quiet until I start recording, then the dog starts barking or an ice cream truck goes down the street. It's always something. So if my voice sounds a little more worn out than usual, just deal with it. So it's been about 2 years since my demotion from Hypixel server staff, and even now, with so much time passed and so much that's been going on since then, the most common question that I get asked to this day is, why don't you apply for staff again? At the time of recording this, I've already been asked by 3 different people just this week. And the first answer to this question is, well, they probably wouldn't accept me anyways. The staff manager who demoted me did say I could reapply later if I choose to, but I mean, I doubt they'd be quick to bring back someone into a position they essentially fired me from. But to be honest, even if they were open to accepting me, I honestly have absolutely no interest in being part of the staff team, especially with the way it currently is. Of course, the follow-up to this answer is always, why? Why don't you want to be staff again? To which I've usually been rather vague and non-descriptive, but unfortunately that tends to leave people with even more questions that they want answered. I'm not hating on those who ask me these questions. I think it's great, in fact, that people still acknowledge all the time and effort I put into the server as a staff member, even years later, and want me to continue helping the server. But just like before, when I made a video about why I'm no longer a Hypixel moderator to begin with, it gets very tiresome having to answer the same question again and again and again, which leads me to why I am making this video today. People want answers? Well, my curious comrades wonder no more. Today, I am going to explain why I will not rejoin the Hypixel staff team, so buckle up, Buttercup, because we've got some tea to spill.
Exposed, 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 exposed. You're exposed. You're exposed. You are exposed. Exposed, 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 exposed. You are exposed, sir. I'm going to expose you. Expose you. Oh my god, expose you.
I imagine this is going to be a rather lengthy video, and I understand probably not everyone wants to sit through me rambling for so long, so the TLDR of this would be, I don't want to rejoin staff because there are a lot of issues within the team that ultimately boils down to persisting problems with the management. If you want more details and more of an explanation as to what I'm talking about, then let's continue. Now, before I get into this, I want to make something very clear to dispel any assumptions or concerns. I am not making this video trying to get staff again. You would think this would be kind of obvious since the whole topic is why I don't want to be staff, but there's always those incredibly stupid people that seem to find their way onto my videos. So just wanted to clear that up. In fact, in hindsight, being demoted was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because it saved me from continuing to involve myself with a very broken and corrupt system. Also, I am not making this video just to trash talk staff. I could easily call out names and single out individuals who I'll vaguely be describing in this video, but my goal with this is to not cause endless hate and harassment for the staff team. My goal is to answer a question that's been asked of me countless times and to bring light to these issues that have been ongoing for years and have only gotten worse. Also, while I try to make sure that anything I talk about in these sorts of videos is completely factual, there are some things that may just be speculation or rumors and I'm not entirely sure are 100% accurate, and I'll try to mention those particular examples when I get to them, but I've done probably as much research as I possibly can and spoken with some very reliable sources who, of course, I am not going to name, and if you think you know who it is, then you're probably wrong anyways. These particular sources aren't intending to leak information, they are just very worried about the server and the direction it's going in, and they want their concerns addressed. And some of the points I'll be making here are things I've already mentioned in my 2 demotion videos, so I apologize if it sounds a bit repetitive from those, but I'll be elaborating more here on what I talked about back then. So there's your disclaimer. Got that out of the way. Only like 6 minutes into the video now. Let's just get right into it. The first subject I want to discuss, since it's one of the bigger ones, and of course this relates to me, is the topic of demotions. It's kind of like the situation with the former staff manager Kevin that I talked about in a previous video. I'll leave a link to that in the video description if you guys want to check that out. But it was similar to where I had this really negative experience and I thought I was alone in that situation and no one else was dealing with anything similar. And just like Kevin and that whole nonsense, I was very wrong, thinking I was the only one. I have been one of many bogus or unfair demotions. Specifically for me, for those who aren't familiar with the details of what happened, basically there was someone on the forums who was saying I should get cancer and die after I had just spent several months in the hospital for treatment. So I banned them and they got unbanned for reasons I wasn't aware of at the time, and no one had come to at least talk to me about it first. So I was rather frustrated and went on a bit of a rant on my private Twitter account, which I admit and have before that I shouldn't have done that. I was rather frustrated. But then a couple weeks later, I go to one of the staff managers for help with a certain issue. But instead of giving me help, he takes the opportunity to tell me that I'm being demoted due to a zero tolerance policy for staff saying anything negative at all about the team publicly. Which did make me very confused and upset at the time, and I posted a video talking about it so I wouldn't have to answer the same question a billion times of why I'm not staff anymore. And then afterwards, I was approached by a different admin who is not a staff manager to talk about the situation. To make a long story short, there were actually 2 reasons given for my demotion, even though I was only told about the one. And it was a combination of what I said on Twitter and my inactivity during the year up until that point. Now, as I said, I certainly acknowledge that I made mistakes, and one could argue that those 2 reasons together could have maybe justified a sudden boot from the staff team, but there's a few problems with that. This zero tolerance policy the manager mentioned, never existed. This was confirmed by the admin I spoke with. So I guess the manager just completely made it up? I don't know why, but also in regards to my inactivity, as I mentioned, I had just spent several months in the hospital, which the admins knew of, and said it was okay that I'd be gone and I could keep my rank during that time. But the real kicker is that the admin told me that the manager claimed to have given me many warnings about being inactive. And he specifically remembered because he always kept notes whenever he spoke with a staff member and wrote down what was discussed. But the thing is, that was also a complete lie. If I still had access to the staff Slack server, then I could even prove that the logs would show that before going to the manager for help and promptly being demoted, the only other time I had spoken with the manager was the previous year to inform them that I would be in the hospital. And I told the admin that the manager's claims were a complete lie, but it was just brushed off like it was no big deal, which was very concerning because to me, it seemed like the manager had made up these interactions to try to add a reason for a demotion he couldn't completely justify, which is very alarming to say the least. And that's just my story. Since uploading my 2 videos on why I'm not mod anymore, I've heard probably close to a couple dozen similar stories of unjustified demotions, where the managers either lied, didn't allow staff members to give their side of the story on a situation before being demoted, or believing a falsified report, or gave ridiculous reasons such as being caught up in drama even though the staff member hadn't done done anything wrong. Or if someone was taking a break from the team and wanted to come back, the managers would completely ignore their messages or give lame excuses why they couldn't come back. The worst I think I've heard was one staff member who was in a private Discord server with some friends, and they made an off-the-cuff joke. Not something really appropriate and definitely not something that could be said on the server, but it wasn't too bad. But someone from that Discord had gone to the managers and told them, so they demoted that staff member for making a slightly inappropriate joke with a friend in a private Discord. It's like they expect staff to maintain a painfully positive and professional attitude at all times, wherever they are on the internet. Like the day you become staff, you're practically selling your soul to them, and any slip up means you're out. A sudden demotion would certainly be understandable if a staff member was, for example, running a neo-Nazi website or displaying white supremacist views to the public, but dictating their entire internet life? I think that just shows who the real Nazis are. Though keep in mind, I have no way of knowing if these situations actually happened. This is only one side of the story, which is what I'm being told. But to get this many accusations of the managers being corrupt and giving out unfair demotions, it doesn't exactly seem less than truthful. So all the lies and corruption makes it difficult to believe anything the rest of the staff team say publicly. Another very prominent issue with the staff that I saw when I was on the team and is even still apparent today is the blatant favoritism and bias shown towards certain staff members. I mentioned in previous videos how certain mods who were known to be close friends with the managers would have more authority over others and make decisions that should be reserved for management only. This included things like deciding who should be promoted from helper to moderator, or having to go to a specific mod for permission to permanently ban a donor, which, as I said, really seems like something that only the management should be doing. And it really split up the staff team because these certain mods suddenly started acting all high and mighty like they were better than the other staff members because they got special privileges and authority. There were concerns about this brought to the admins. Even I tried to say something about it a long time ago, but instead of fixing these problems, the managers instead acted completely oblivious like there were no problems at all. Everything was perfectly fine, peachy keen, and they promoted these specific mods to admins, which was the complete opposite of what they should have done because it only made the existing problems way worse. And while the managers are very trigger happy when it comes to demoting people they aren't buddies with, this special group of staff can get away with practically anything. There are some staff members who absolutely would not still have their rank if they hadn't been romantically involved with certain admins at some point or another. But then at the same time, there are others being demoted for the most minor of things. I don't know how true this is, but there are also stories going around of a moderator who unbanned someone from an infamous hacking group, AJS, because they were friends. And this particular mod wasn't even removed from the staff team for it, and the person wasn't rebanned. Eventually, long afterwards, this mod was demoted, but it was for inactivity and nothing relating to this whole unbanned situation. And it was this huge controversy going on at the time, so there's no way the managers weren't aware of it. They even brought someone into the staff team who is infamous for being a hacker and a former leader of a hacking guild. So I don't know the full story behind that, but it's like the standards for becoming staff only seem to matter for those they don't like or aren't friends with. Sort of on the same track of certain staff being treated better than others and acting all holier than thou with their extra authority is the very unfortunate result of bad decisions being made and it having a negative effect on the rest of the staff. These power-hungry people get to the top and become admin, and the negativity resulting from having them in charge trickles down to the rest of the team and results in lack of trust in the other staff members or the inability for them to make their own decisions because of bad idiot-proof policies put in place. There's no human aspect, so staff still can't make their own choices, and it becomes a horrible, endless loop. That's how the person I banned from the forums for telling me to die of cancer got unbanned unbanned, not because it was an undeserved punishment, since it certainly was, but because I had banned someone who was harassing me. At some point, managers decided that in cases like this, I was supposed to get another staff member to act as a third party and handle it, which I sort of understand since it may prevent biased punishments, but if proper guidelines were in place to begin with, then it shouldn't even be an issue, and staff should be able to handle their own problems immediately without dragging someone else into it and just wasting time. A revamp for the guidelines has been in the works for years, since back when Kevin was in charge. And with the rotation of managers, it just gets passed from person to person and no one seems to want to bother with it. And it's like the admins would rather just make terrible individual decisions that sometimes they don't even stick to as time goes on. There's an old saying that I've used quite often when discussing these sorts of things, which is the fish rots from the head down. And it means that the leadership is the root cause of an organization's failure and demise, which is very true for the Hypixel staff team. Of course, the staff have never been super popular with everyone. I've said many times in previous videos that a huge part of being a staff member is punishing people who break the rules, essentially taking the game away from them either temporarily or permanently. So there's always going to be people who disagree or don't like what staff are doing. But in recent years, it's only gotten worse and worse. Of course, there are people who still support staff in everything they do, but those people have become fewer and farther in between. Comments of praise and appreciation have been replaced with those of criticism, anger, sometimes even hate. The community and even much of the current staff team have been getting frustrated, and understandably so. This leads into my next major issue, being that more often than not, management seem to take criticism as a personal attack on them rather than valid feedback, even from their own staff. I've spoken with many staff members, and it's become a running joke that opinions don't matter and the managers don't give a damn about what anyone has to say. And since they often aren't open to criticism, this is how they train staff to react the same way, and this attitude is spread throughout the server. The management have made many bad decisions over the past few years that have been hated by the team, but because they don't accept criticism, they don't care and brush it off or completely ignore concerns brought to them. The staff team could be on the verge of completely imploding, but the management will silence them to keep that artificially happy image. One example I specifically remember from my time as staff was the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Paris in November 2015, where, of course, there were some horrible, disgusting people who would say awful things on the server like, they should have killed more people, or pray for ISIS, things like that. Since this was a very recent event that was still fresh in everyone's minds, those of us on the staff team wanted to deal with this quickly and do the most we could to discourage this from ever happening. But there were no specific guidelines, so many of the mods came to the collective decision to ban these people for a week for promoting terrorism. But soon after we began doing this, the managers told us to stop and said we should only be muting for an hour for being rude or negative behavior or some other very minor reason that wasn't appropriate at all for this sort of situation. And when we tried to say we didn't think it was enough of a punishment, we were told that it wasn't up to us. We could only do what we were told and it was not up for discussion, and that was just the end of it. Another situation was during the release of Watchdog. I'm sure, as most of you know, is the server's cheat detection. And also, I'm sure many people at some point have seen the message pop up in chat in-game where it says, a player has been removed from your game for hacking or abuse and blah blah blah, etc. But initially, the message, whether a player was banned from Watchdog or a staff member, said that the ban was done by Watchdog, which confused a lot of people. This then made staff seem slow or even lazy, and none of the staff liked going through the trouble of spectating and recording someone, then banning them just for the credit to be given given to Watchdog. It made us look kind of useless, which again was a concern brought to the managers, but we were told basically to deal with it. It doesn't matter, wasn't a big deal, and it's not up for discussion. Which personally blew my mind because this particular manager had never even been in our shoes, didn't know what it was like to be a moderator, and told us, who did have to deal with the backlash from this, that it's not important, not a big deal, and that was just... Yet another example that I've been informed of the staff team strongly disagreeing with a decision made by the managers, but being basically told to deal with it, or were just flat out ignored, was the changing of the punishment for verbal abuse from a ban to a mute. Personally, to me, it makes sense that if someone tells another person to kill themselves in real life, it should be completely unacceptable behavior that should not be tolerated at all. So it deserves a fairly harsh punishment. There's been some debate over it where some people might be joking or they just say it out of anger and don't really mean it. I don't agree with that, but that's just my opinion. But none of those were the reason the punishment was changed. Apparently, managers have this attitude that staff shouldn't even bother banning all people who break the rules for certain offenses like exhibiting toxic behavior because there will always be more toxic players who come to the server. And instead, they say staff should focus mostly on creating a positive environment, which honestly, I almost have to laugh at because of just how sad it is. As a former moderator, the managers on the largest Minecraft server in the world, with thousands of players daily, millions of unique logins, are just giving up on enforcing rules for toxic players? I mean, what? I'm not even sure how to respond to this. It's like if the police just stopped dealing with traffic violations or stopped arresting drug dealers because, oh, there will just be more anyways, so why bother? More conflicts include when managers decided staff were no longer allowed to punish for any offenses in guild chat, party chat, or private messages, saying that players need to control who they allow on their friend list and into their parties, and we need to teach players to be safer on the internet. No, you don't. That is not your job. Also, they removed the ability for staff to check how many bans they've done, claiming that it's promoting competition among the staff and it's demotivating or causes harassment. But yet, at the same time, they're promoting competition themselves by giving rewards to staff members with the most praise and compliments, since those have become more infrequent. Managers even go as far as dictating specifically what staff say and how they speak in the staff Slack server. For example, a staff member cannot directly ask for help when dealing with any sort of reports if they're backed up, because apparently that would be too demoralizing for the team or something. They instead have to say, "I'll be in TeamSpeak doing reports. Feel free to join." All of these instances I've mentioned are examples where the majority of the staff had a different opinion with the managers or disagreed with the decision they made. And I think their responses of telling staff to just deal with it, not allow any sort of discussion, or even ignore these concerns entirely, that really speaks for itself, and people with that sort of mindset should never be in charge of any kind of team if they're going to run it more like a dictatorship. That Nazi joke I made earlier doesn't seem quite so out there now, does it? Which brings me to my final and most devastating problem of the Hypixel staff management is that they just don't seem to care. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they would rather let the staff team completely fall apart and allow the server to fail. That's not what I mean at all. I'm sure they do care to some extent since this is a job for them. This is how they pay their bills, so if the server shuts down, they're suddenly without a job. But as far as running the team efficiently and effectively, or even any interest in improvement or changes to make things better, that's where it's seriously been lacking. If they do truly care, then they have a horrible way of showing it as they're doing an incredibly poor job. This is the culmination of everything I've discussed so far and then some. The unfair demotions, the bias and favoritism, and not accepting criticism for their terrible decisions. It all shows that the network is in a serious case of neglect as far as the staff goes. I mentioned before how staff guidelines have needed to be reworked for years. And because of this, in the meantime, these outdated guidelines are frequently ignored, even by the managers. Punishments aren't always the same, so it just causes a lot of confusion and anger from people who get the worst of it, while someone might get a lighter punishment for doing the exact same thing. There are many instances, especially when well-known players or YouTubers break the rules, where it seems like guidelines are being made up right on the spot. So it seems a bit unbelievable when staff tell the public that everyone is punished the same. And staff say that if you're banned and have an appeal denied, then the decision is final. Yet there are many players who only needed to message a certain manager with a sob story to get unbanned instantly, even if they're an infamous hacker or they've been banned for years. So the managers, for whatever reason, give so many chances to people who might not deserve it. So it's difficult for the staff to say that the decision of the appeal team is final when it's clearly not, or that ban evading is punishable when rarely anything is ever done about it, or to report rule breakers on the forums and say they'll be taken care of quickly. They've let reports stay neglected for so long. To give you an idea of just how bad it's gotten just on the forums, at the time of recording this, there are several dozen unanswered pages of reports. Not individual reports, whole entire pages. And I won't give the exact number, but with 20 reports per page, it's well over a total of 1,000 reports that the staff have fallen behind on in the past weeks. There's hundreds and hundreds of unanswered item reports, so it could take weeks or even months to be resolved, which is absolutely unacceptable. It never got even half this bad when I was staff. I can't even imagine how bad it is on the server for watchdog reports. It's not even that there's an increase in the rate of reports, it's the same as it's always been. The only difference now is that the managers just don't seem to care. So in turn, many of the staff don't seem to be bothered by it either. A lot of staff members do work really hard and try to keep up, but they can only do so much with a broken system that won't even allow them to ask for help. On the opposite side of that coin is rules that are inconsistently enforced, like saying boosting and teaming are forbidden in PvP games, but then when players and staff want the same rules applied to other games, nothing is done. People can cheat as freely as they choose, like the managers pick and choose which games to actually give a damn about. The staff team as a whole appears to be severely disorganized, so it's possible the managers may just be overwhelmed and burnt out, but they aren't taking control and fixing or even acknowledging all these problems. I've been asked by several people if I think the staff team is broken beyond repair, and to be honest, I don't know if the staff team can be saved at this point. These issues have been persisting for way too long, and the staff have garnered quite a negative reputation that's just getting worse every day. And it would take something drastic to resolve everything. I have no doubt that there will be some staff members who watch this video and think I'm completely wrong, that I have no idea what I'm talking about, and everything within the staff team is perfectly great. But as I said, many of these opinions and statements are not my own. I can't personally judge how the staff team is handling themselves today because obviously I'm not there anymore. These concerns are coming from current staff who care about the server as I once did and want to see these issues be resolved so the staff team can work together more cohesively, which wouldn't just benefit them, but the players and the server as a whole as well. The actions of the staff have an impact on the entire network, which seems like something that's easily forgotten. The current staff team is hopeless as it is and doomed to fail. So if you don't see anything wrong, then perhaps you might be part of the problem. Just something to consider. And yes, I will admit, Staff shouldn't be telling me this information, but they only do so because they trust me and know that I've been on that side of the fence. I understand what they're talking about, and I share their frustrations. And the management has made it clear they don't want to hear concerns and aren't open to criticism, so staff are afraid to speak up and give criticism for fear of being demoted. So where else are they supposed to go to voice their opinions? So please keep this in mind, guys, next time you're hating or raging at the staff team because of something they're doing. Remember that the helpers and moderators, those who are more seen by the public, it's likely not their choice what they're doing, because it's rarely up to them. It's not all their fault that they're being taught these bad ways and being led in the wrong direction. Something has to be done about this, or the server will only continue to suffer, since, as I said, the actions of staff have an effect on players' experience every day. So if the staff team is bad, then the experience will be bad, making players likely to become frustrated and angry, or possibly even leave the server for good, as many people have. To be completely honest, the only viable solution I can see would be to completely overhaul the staff, get a bigger team with new and better guidelines, and remove all current managers, which might suck because this is their job for most, if not all of them, so losing a paycheck would be rather unfortunate. But at the end of the day, Hypixel is a business, and sometimes people who aren't fit for the position or aren't doing a good enough job just need to be fired. A manager in any other corporation acting this way, lying to get others removed, showing blatant bias and favoritism, ignoring any criticism and feedback, they would have been removed a long time ago. I don't say this out of a personal grudge towards any of the managers, even the one who demoted me. I only say this because I see the server suffering. I see the players and staff are unhappy. And as a former staff member myself, who put countless hours into making the server better, I don't want to see it fail. But it's certainly going in that direction if something isn't done, and soon. People ask me all the time, as a former mod, what advice I'd give to others for those who are looking to apply and join the staff team, and honestly, the most important thing is know what you're getting yourself into. Because while it may seem like all sunshine and rainbows on the surface, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Don't fall for a job, even a volunteer one, calling you a family and then treating you like trash to be tossed out and thrown away. It's just a trap to get lonely, dedicated individuals to feel disproportionately invested in a broken system that disposes of you at the smallest mistake or when they feel you're no longer useful. I certainly fell into that trap, and that is why I will never rejoin the staff team. Well, this has been quite a video, and I have certainly rambled on for long enough. I feel like my voice is probably about to give out at any minute. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video if you made it this far. If you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. If you would like to support my channel, check out my Patreon, and don't forget to check out my other videos that I have on my channel. I upload a variety of games throughout the week, including Minecraft-related videos every Monday. So thank you guys again, and until next time, I will see you guys later.